not make it this evening, to see the replay, and that includes you, so I'll send you all the replay as well in case you want to share this with your teams or anybody else that's not been able to make it this evening. So tonight, I've already said we're going to look at how we set and achieve growth goals for your practice, but I guess the big thing this evening is kind of giving you some thinking space. So there'll be some principles we cover this evening that will be quite straightforward, and there'll be others that perhaps require a little bit more of a kind of deep thinking on your part around what it is you might need to change around the practice, what it is you may need to do in terms of communication with your teams. So I really want to give you the chance to think about that this evening. So we'll make the session interactive. We've got some polls, but also we'll share some specific practical things that you can do as we work through this evening's session. So there's a piece around barriers, identifying barriers for growth. So I'd like us to spend some time on that. I've got a poll on that, so I'd like to get your input. Then I'd like to share an approach that we use with our clients to create a practice growth plan, so principles around effective growth planning. And this works for your practice. It also works for businesses as well. So it's a kind of tried and tested business principle. And then think beyond just the plan, because having a plan is one thing, actually putting it into practice, getting your team engaged and thinking about how everybody is aligned to practice is something completely different. So we just need to make sure that we'll consider both of those as we go through this evening's session. So I think most of you know me, but for those who don't, just a quick introduction. So my name is Justin Leigh. I've been in and out of dentistry for around 33 years. I know I don't look that old, but it's about 33 years. And of those 33 years, about 28 of them I've been in kind of bit more business-led roles rather than in dental roles. I started out as a dental technician. And I've worked for lots of different organizations, and now I run my own coaching business. And one of the things that we focus in on is really helping people to get from what is a place of perhaps a little uncertainty, perhaps a little bit within your team. Sometimes you get a bit of negativity, you might get a bit of inconsistency, and thinking about how do you start to get people highly engaged, doing the right things, really committed to growing your practice and performing at a high level. That's really what we try and help people make that transition, that shift. And I think for more senior people in practices, you know, the principal, partners, practice managers, that's more straightforward. Sometimes it's about how you get your team on that journey as well. And we'll talk about some of those principles this evening. And there are a number of things that have happened over the last few years. Two of them are these books that I've written. And if you haven't had the chance to look at these books, I genuinely would recommend them. There's lots of insights. Almost on a kind of weekly basis, I'll get responses from people who say, I'm at this point in your book, and this really resonated with me. So there's two books. There's Inspire, Consult, Sell, which really helps to think about the communication with patients and your teams in a way that is much more consultative, much more about the other person, understanding their needs, and then being able to position whatever it is you're offering in a way that really is more compelling. And personally, I know the word sell can be a bit of a turn off, and I fully appreciate that, but don't let that put you off. Don't let the title of the book put you off. It's a great read. And then the second book, which came out just this year, is Coaching Leaders. And that's really about leadership and how do we lean into a more coaching-led style of leadership, less directive, much more coaching-led. And it's, again, feedback from that book is superb. So I really encourage you, if you get the chance to have a look at those offline, I'd love to hear your thoughts from it. So let's start with a poll this evening. So I'd love to hear your experience to date. So the challenges that you find in growing your practice, there's 5 options here. And one of them is about setting the goals for the growth of the practice. The other is about what do you do? How do you actually go about growing the practice? The third is then getting your team on board to help and support that growth. The fourth is managing time, or making time, I should say, to action the growth plan, because the plan itself doesn't do the work. We have to do things right aligned with the plan. And then the fifth is whether or not, perhaps either you or your team might be happy with the status quo, and there might be a bit of inertia. How do we overcome that inertia so that people start to think differently and do different things? That could be quite challenging. So just click on the one that most resonates with you at the moment in your practice, or to date or going forward. I'd love to hear what you're thinking. Okay, good, thank you. I think we've got about halfway through. Oh, brilliant, thank you. More and more people voting. I appreciate that. Thanks for sharing your current position. That's good. Where are we? That's good. Okay, almost everybody. Brilliant. Perfect. Thank you. Thank you for that. Right, let me share the results. So this is what what everyone on the call thinks. So number one is getting our team on board to grow. So that's interesting. So that's number one tonight. Number two is kind of knowing how to grow the practice. What are the key things we need to do to grow the practice? Number three then is setting the goals and targets for growth. And then fourth is making time to action the growth plan. Nobody's saying happy with the status quo or overcoming inertia. Brilliant. Okay. Thank you for that. That's really useful because you'll see the list I've got on the slide in front of me. Those top three are the ones that come up. We've got them in reverse order this evening, but we will cover all three. So that's hopefully is going to be useful for you in terms of some insights around how you can overcome and improve these three key areas. Something else I just want to share with you, we have this tool called a patient experience scorecard. And if you've got anybody that's engaging with the patient, who is having a conversation, is involved in creating that patient experience, in particular with communication, this is a really nice tool. It's completely free of charge. And what it does is it just presents some assessment statements to your teams, so they start to think differently about how they engage with patients, and it will give them a personal development report at the end with some recommendations. A really nice tool. I'll share the link with you as we get towards the end. But we ask a number of questions in that scorecard, and four things come up that are really quite interesting. I'll share these with you as well as context for today. So one of them is that the statement that's presented is, as a practice team, we need to revisit our patient experience, the experience we deliver for patients. And you'll see that 75% of people that go through our scorecard agree or strongly agree with that statement. So it's quite interesting. There's a real momentum and urgency here around improving the patient experience. The next one that's interesting then is I understand the importance of running my practice as a business and allocate time to do so. 60% of people say they do, which of course means that 40% don't. So there's a real gap there in terms of, actually thinking beyond clinical, thinking about the practice as a business. And then once you've got that kind of time in place and a plan in place, actually it's about regular communication about the goals of the practice to keep your team engaged and keep people kind of moving forward with the momentum to support the growth. And 57% of people saying they do that, but which of course means 43% don't. And so we've got, again, it's not quite a 50-50 split, but there's a big gap in terms of which areas we need to focus in on. And then finally, the one that is almost a 50-50 split is making regular improvements that benefit our patients and their relationship with the practice. So we've got some really great, this is good data, and it's really great opportunity for us to start to think, how do we make these improvements? And if these are areas that you think would be useful for your practice, have these in mind as we go through the topics that we discussed this evening. So three key areas: setting goals and targets for growth, getting the team on board to grow the practice, and then knowing what to do about growing the practice. So we'll address them in that order, because if we can address them in that order, they'll almost flow and solve each other. One will solve the other problem. So we're really going to think about the challenges, then we'll look at how we address them. So setting goals and targets for growth. It's quite tempting to allow your clinical practice, once it's established, to kind of move along and tick along, if you like. And that makes it comfortable for your team. It makes it comfortable as a leader sometimes. And actually, if you find yourself, you've been in practice a long time, but it's not broken, the danger is we don't fix it and we kind of start to feel a little bit complacent. And that's one of the key reasons that comes up when people are honest and they say, this is why we haven't been thinking about growth, because actually we're quite comfortable. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you do want to grow, it's about breaking that cycle. And then in terms of knowing what to do, identifying key areas of improvement and progress and growth can be difficult, right? It's not straightforward. There's no silver bullet. There's not one thing that's going to do it. And it can feel a bit out of reach or overwhelming. So knowing those key steps is part of the barrier to growth as well. We'll talk about some of those things that we can do to change that tonight. And then getting your team on board to grow, that's really important. But a lot of the times, the communication we have with our teams is quite functional. It's about what's going on day to day. It's about what's happening right in front of us. And actually breaking that cycle and creating some time to talk about, okay, we've got some growth plans for the practice. We want to think about things differently, can seem a bit alien, not only for the team, but also for us as leaders. You can kind of think, actually, how do I instigate that conversation? How do I make a change to what we've been doing for a period of time? And we'll talk about some of the things we can do to address that today. And then, of course, goal setting, right? We always think it's going to be like this chart on the left. We think we kind of have this great idea. We're going to get some investment or create some investment. We're going to build it and create something of value. And it's just going to keep moving forward in one direction. And actually, it doesn't ever work like that. I don't know if anybody's had that experience. If you have had that, I'd love to hear how you did it. But what it'd be much more like is that you kind of go forwards, you get knocked off course, something else happens, you know, maybe there's an issue in the practice, maybe somebody leaves, maybe there's some stuff that happens personally, and all of a sudden you've got all of these different things that conspire to kind of almost create this resistance to achieving your goals. So we have to recognize that that's going to happen. It just happens as, you know, almost naturally in any business. And I like to think about, you know, if we think about patients, we think about our team, we think about how we move them along the journey with us. I share this model with you because when I share this, very often I get good kind of response to it. But we think about whether it's our teams or our patients, they start, you know, normally with us unaware that a change is required or unaware that something needs to happen. And our job is to make sure that we have a plan or we're prepared. And with that preparation, we're able to move them to a point of attention. So they're attentive that something needs to change. And when they're attentive, our job then is to kind of share some insights, start to disrupt the way they think, give them some new ideas. And from there, they'll start to become interested in change, and particularly interesting with patients' high-value treatments. And once we got interest from the patient or our team, then it's about understanding what do they need in order to motivate themselves to change. And that means we have to, you know, get curious, ask them some questions, listen carefully, understand from their perspective. And what happens as they start to explain that is that they move themselves along this journey from being interested to actually having a desire to create some kind of change for themselves. And once they're prepared to change, then we can start to talk about, okay, well, here's a solution. Here's how it might work. Here's how, you know, treatment might be transformational. Here's how a plan for growth might help. And the idea of that is that because the person is more receptive in that position of, you know, desire to change, then they're prepared to hear the solution, and that's much more likely to lead to action. And once they are prepared to take action, then we say, okay, well, here's what you can do next. Here's a proposal around what we need to do, whether that's for a patient having treatment or whether that's for our team kind of moving forward and making some decisions. And ultimately for patients, we really then want them to kind of go forward and commit to treatment. And what we do then is just initiate some form of action, make sure that there's always some commitment from us, from our teams, and from the patient. And that really does help them to then move forward with confidence and feel much more engaged in what it is we're trying to work together to achieve. And ultimately, you know, I think about the continuum, which is way beyond just individual treatments. We want to think about loyal patients that return back to see us, that have a great experience, and they want to recommend and refer patients to us. And we do that through a process of continual reflection, communication, and improvement of the practice and improvement across our teams. And many of you will be doing this already, but to think about it in this structure as a step-by-step process for really engaging patients and engaging your teams can be really useful. And I will share these slides with you after tonight's session as well, so you've got them for reference. If you want to share this with your teams or just reflect on it afterwards, you've got this as an option to do so. So we talked about, you know, some of the challenges. We talked about some principles. Let's talk about step one, which is, you know, setting a goal or goals for your practice and thinking about how those targets then align with that goal and we start to achieve them. And there's this whole thing you'll have heard, you know, the Simon Sinek movement around start with why. And the why is important. You know, why you do anything is really important because that's going to keep you motivated. So recognizing that for you as leaders in your business or your practice, nothing changes unless you instigate it, unless you change first. You drive a change and it will happen. But it has to happen from you. So the first step in growing your practice is to set some goals. And most people without goals tend to drift. So we don't have the direction that we want unless we set some goals. And there's a few things that you could do. So the first thing I talk about is setting this kind of aspirational goal. Think about a headline goal that you want your practice to be known alongside. And there's lots of things. You want to find something that is easy to understand, and something that's compelling. I've got some examples for you. So maybe it's to be the first choice for aesthetic dentistry in, your region or the south of England. Maybe it's to be the leader in preventative dentistry in the north of England, if that's your interest and something that you're really passionate about. Maybe it's to be the leader in smile design and transformation in the east of England. But kind of setting out your stall and saying, this is what we do, this is what we want to be known for, can be really transformational, not only for you, but for your teams as well, because they'll start to align with that aspirational overarching goal that you're trying to achieve. And this is something that a lot of people miss, this kind of first step of, right, what's the overarching, inspiring, aspirational goal? So that's a really nice starting point. Once you've got that in place, then it's about kind of sharing that with your team, starting to have a conversation about it, but also for yourself, being clear, why is it you want to achieve that aspirational goal? Why is that important for you personally? And personally is really kind of important, because really what we want to understand is how do we create for ourselves this internal intrinsic motivation? Because once we start setting goals, it means we're going to have to change. It means whether it's within us or within our teams, we're probably going to meet some sort of resistance. And so we really want to align that goal with something that is personally meaningful to us. So what is it we're trying to achieve, the overarching aspirational goal? And then for us personally, why is that important? And that might seem like on the surface quite a straightforward question to answer, but actually when you start to reflect on it and dive a bit deeper, it can take a little bit of work to get to your own personal reasons why that's important. So what is it you're looking to achieve? Why is that important? And this, as I say, sometimes just might need a little bit of cultivating. You might want to talk to someone else in the practice. You might want to talk to your partner. You might want to talk to one of the other managers in the practice, just to start to make sure that for you the motivation is high. And we know that a lot of people can sometimes fall out of love with dentistry, fall out of love with their business, and partly that's because sometimes they get a bit disconnected with why they're doing it. And this is it can be a really useful exercise to go through, regardless of where you are in your career or managing your practice. And then once you've got that, once you've kind of spent some time and you've got that clarity, this is what we're trying to achieve, this is why it's important, then we can get to goal setting. And the doing it in that order can be really powerful for you from a personal perspective and a personal motivation. So then we want to start to think, okay, well, if that's the overarching kind of aspiring goal, what is it we want to then deliver in line with that? So you might start to think, okay, what level of revenue do I want to achieve in the practice? And revenue or sales or income, it's about kind of hitting that top line number. And then once you've got the revenue, actually, what does that look like in terms of the level of profit? So after I've taken all my costs out, I've got this level of revenue. What does that mean for profit? And you'll have to do some calculations around running costs and other embedded costs within the practice. But actually having those two as key figures in your goals and your targets is really important. What sales do we want to generate? What profit do we want to generate? And then we can start to think about, okay, well, what makes up that level of revenue and that profit? How many patients do we need to service? So, obviously thinking private patients predominantly. You might have a small NHS contract, but predominantly you really want to think about private patients. And then you might want to start to think, okay, well, alongside that private patient base, what about specialist treatments? What sort of specialist treatments do you want and how often? So how many per month or how many per week, depending on how close you want to get to your kind of figures and numbers. And then start to think about the size and scale of your practice. How many surgeries and chairs do you want? How many do you have today? How many do you want in the future? And what size of team would it take to service that? And once you start to think about this, it just starts to change the direction, start to change your motivation around what you're trying to build within your practice. And these goals, once you've set them, they can obviously change in the future. And it's surprising once you start to set these goals and then you realize you can achieve them. It's surprising how these do evolve and change over time. Certainly, as you find yourself kind of meeting some of your own stretch goals as you move forward. And there's a reason this is important, not only for you, but for your teams, because there's a phenomenon in the mind called the reticular activating system. And what the reticular activating system does is it's almost like an automatic goal seeker. And what it does is, you'll have all had the experience when you were maybe looking for a new car or looking for a new piece of kit, maybe for your practice, or a new watch, or a new handbag, or depending on your preference. And as soon as you kind of start to have an interest in something, you'll notice that it starts to show up everywhere. And the reason that happens is because our mind then says, if that's something we want, we start to tune into that and tune out of other things. And that's why goal setting is so important, because once we set a goal and we start to communicate it with our teams, everybody starts to align for opportunities to achieve that goal. And if we don't spend the time to set these targets, set these goals, and create this kind of initial momentum, then this never gets triggered for either us or our teams. So it's a really useful thing to recognize that once we set these goals, it's more than just saying we want to achieve something. It's about tuning ourselves and our teams into the opportunities that then will naturally start to appear and develop as we're working through that plan. So it's really important that we get this right. And there's lots of ways you can do it. I have a really simple target setting template where you can just kind of by month look at different elements of your practice, and all of these can be updated, but you might look at private plan income. You might look at, say, clear aligners or Invisalign. You might look at composite bonding. You might look at other general private treatment. If you're an implantology center, you might have some implants in here as well. But you can start to build out a plan that says, right, by month, what are the numbers we want to hit? Then in your operating costs, really simple, you can put your building costs, everything that it takes to kind of run the practice, staffing costs. You can look at material costs, lab costs, associate contracts, and then other costs, because we want to keep this as simple and straightforward to manage as possible. And then that's going to bring you down to kind of net income. You can then start to look at tax, so that we can look at EBITDA and post-tax. And then I always think about, if we're going to start to think about the team, should we be thinking about a bonus? And we'll talk about that next, or some kind of protected income that allows us to reinvest in our teams, and we'll talk about that in a minute. So it's a really nice template. I'm happy to share this template with you just as a way to start to map out some numbers for your practice that kind of tunes you and your teams into what is it we're trying to achieve. And then, of course, so once we've got those numbers in place, then we need to think, okay, how do we enroll the team on that growth mission? Because we know that business growth, we can't do it on our own. We have to get the team on board. It's a team sport to grow a practice. It's so important. And we have to think, we recognize that if we want to communicate with our teams about goals, it's really difficult if we're not clear on it. So getting ourselves clear on what it is we're trying to achieve, is talk about this aspirational goal. Then we talk about, once we've got the aspirational goal, why is it we want to achieve that? Then we think about, okay, from that position, what are the numbers that might underpin it? We don't have to share all of this with our teams, but we certainly should be sharing some of the key elements of it so that we can give them clarity over what it takes to achieve those goals. And this higher purpose, sometimes the higher purpose is just being in a business or a practice that's growing. That tends to engage and motivate people, rather than being somewhere where they feel perhaps they're stuck. But we always get confidence. Your teams, I've worked in lots of different growing businesses. When you know you're in a business that wants to grow, actually that can be really motivating for people. They feel like they're making a shift, and the future is going to be better than today or the past, and that's really important for people. And our job as leaders is to enroll the team in that growth mission, so that they feel part of it, they feel engaged and enthusiastic. It's really important for us and for them. And there's an energy that we create that starts to inspire people. And if your team feel inspired, then you'll find that your patients will notice it. And I think it was Richard Branson who said the quote, treat your staff so well that they don't want to leave, because they will then communicate that and translate that to your customers. And he was using it in the customer context. focus on your team, and they will look after your customers the way you want them to. And I think there's definitely something in that, especially when you're growing a business or a practice. And
is it itchy bum?
I talked about
Okay.
the importance of getting the team on board and it being a team sport. It absolutely is. We are all more effective when our team are on board and motivated to grow the practice. So thinking about how we do that is really important. And what I recommend is having some time to discuss your plans. Once you're clear on it, you've got this overarching kind of aspirational vision for the business. You're clear on why that's important to you, because that will give you a passion when you're talking about it. You've got some numbers that you're clear on, and you can share key elements of that. Perhaps it's numbers of treatments rather than practice financials. And discuss the plans with each of your team members one-to-one. Just share with them what your ideas are and what you're trying to achieve. And then asking them about their own motivations for the work they do, and agreeing some kind of either recognition or reward for being part of those growth ambitions and delivering them is even more motivational, even more powerful. They say, what gets recognized and rewarded gets repeated. So if we want people to perform at a higher level, repeat great behaviors, then we have to put in place some recognition, certainly. And if you can reward as well, that's really going to give people that extra boost of energy and motivation. And thinking about, from our team, what's in it, they're all thinking this, right? Whenever we have these conversations about growth or change or plans, everybody thinks the same thing. And that is, what's in it for me? What benefit do I have from being part of this? And the clearer we can be on that, and understanding what that person's motivations are, is really helpful, because then we can align with what they've said is important for them. But having clarity over that really helps you get confidence in putting together a plan that's going to get them engaged. And having that as part of not just one-to-ones, but also your practice team meetings, creating regular rhythm and cadence around those practice team discussions and sharing, this is the mission we're on as a team, this is how we're doing so far. Those regular updates is really powerful. And I talked about this, bottom part of this template, whether you use this or any other template. One of the things that really successful businesses do and practices do is, as you start to build out your plans, you factor in a portion of profit that you already plan to reinvest in team engagement. It might be bonuses. My advice is usually to try and make those team experiences, because when people get bonuses and money, that money tends to get kind of siphoned away to pay bills, to do things that are quite rudimentary. Whereas if you collate that together and have some kind of team engagement experience, the positive impact that has on team morale and your team's engagement and motivation is almost it's almost exponential. So we think beyond just we'll give you a bonus. Think actually, what key experiences could we create throughout a year that celebrate the achievement of these different milestones in our plans? And if you budget it in and then you meet those different achievements and targets, actually it becomes a self-funding exercise that supercharges engagement and motivation for your teams. And that's a key factor of not only setting your targets, but achieving them. Because once you get your teams, I always remember being in businesses where we set these up as incentives, and there were team incentives. We would get to the end of a period, usually quarterly, and as we were getting towards the end of the quarter, people would say, how are we performing against the target? Are we going to get the experience this quarter? And that's a really positive place to be, because people then start to look for those opportunities to generate additional revenue or income or treatments in the practice sense for you and the business. So you really want to, where possible, galvanize the support of your teams to get everybody on board with this idea of achieving the practice target, so they don't feel like just your targets anymore. It feels like the whole team's invested in delivering it. It can be really, really powerful. And there are a few tips for this evening in terms of growing the practice. I've got this top 10 tips document, which I'm happily to share with you. And we really think about what are the key elements of unlocking practice growth, helping your teams to take practice to the next level, and start that kind of momentum building around growth and really starting to achieve those aspirational goals that you set. So there's 10 things on here. I won't go through them all. We've looked at the first couple, but you'll see there's 10 here, and I'll share the slides with you afterwards. So you're welcome to have a look at this in the background after tonight's session as well. Now, the other thing to remember, because I'm sure as we're going through this evening, you're thinking, okay, yes, some good ideas here, and I'm thinking about my team and how I get them on board. You'll find that whether it's for you or for your teams, generally speaking, enthusiasm, we get enthusiastic, we can get people engaged, but if we don't find a way to maintain the momentum, that enthusiasm tends to drift. It tends to have a half-life. And so we have to find ways to continually refresh and infuse and bring that enthusiasm back for ourselves and for our team. So it's really important that we get commitment, that we keep this follow-up cycle, that you can re-energize and re-engage your teams on a regular basis, because that's important for you and your motivation and for them. And you know what it's like when you get busy, there's lots of things going on, lots of things demanding your attention. It's really easy to let those fundamentals kind of slip. So I'd say, if you can think about from this evening, what are those key communication opportunities for you in your practice? How do you make sure that you're regularly bringing that back to your teams, bringing it back to yourself at times, so that you've got that momentum and movement that continues as part of your cadence with those conversations with your teams. Okay, so I'd love to hear so far what struck you. I'd love to hear your kind of key actions. There's maybe 2 or 3 things that you're thinking, yeah, this is what I'm going to focus in on based on what I've heard so far. So I'd love to hear your takeaways on that. And there's a couple of other things I'd like to share, and then I'm going to open it up to Q&A. But for now, I'd love, because nothing changes unless we kind of consider what does this mean for us? What action are we going to take? So I'm just going to give you a moment. If you've got a couple of choices. You can either tap away into the comments box. So please do feel free to do that. Or you can come off mute if anybody wants to, if anybody's feeling brave this evening and wants to come off mute and have a chat. I'm very happy to have a conversation with you. Love to hear from you. Save me doing all the talking. But if you'd like to tap away, just feel free to tap away. I'm just going to give you a moment to do that. Just what are your key actions, 1 or 2 things that have really resonated with you this evening that you think, yeah, do you know what, I'm gonna do that. That's a change I can introduce. Just give you a moment. I'll talk amongst myself while you're doing that. Nice to see you, Sonny. I love that global domination there, Sonny, in the background.
Hello, mate. You all right?
Very well, thanks. Yeah, very well. You?
Yeah, it's good to see you, man.
Good. Yeah, you too. Thank you for coming.
I'm more than welcome. I actually flaked on another event to come to this.
I am flattered. Thank you, Sonny.
Welcome, mate. Welcome.
I won't tell that other person, right? We'll keep that between us.
It's not easy, right? Speaking to a group when they don't want to talk back, it's tough sometimes, man.
Yeah, it's good. Well, thank you for joining me.
That's all right. We could both be lonely together.
It's good. It's good. You know as well as I do. In fact, a number of people on here do talking. I know Lewis does a lot of talking, so Lewis will know this experience as well. And in fact, on some of the webinar platforms, you can't even get engagement, so you've got no choice. You've just got to keep monologuing. But no, it's good. Thanks, Tommy. So I've got a note from Sahar. So Sahar, thank you. The idea that enthusiasm has a half-life is a very valuable reminder. Also, I like the idea of budgeting ahead for bonuses as part of an ongoing team incentive. Brilliant. Thanks, Sahar. Yeah. And these are when you think about it, such a simple principle, but it's so easy to overlook. So you get to a point in time where you're like, I haven't really planned for that. Whereas if we can get ahead of it, start to budget those team incentives and experiences into our plans, all of a sudden it becomes something that's self-funding because we've budgeted for it, and it becomes really motivating for the team. So yeah, thanks, Sahar. Glad that's really landed with you. Sandra, lovely to see you too. Thank you for your comment. Sandra says, keeping up the enthusiasm, really involving the team, think about motivation, And oh, Sam Hainsworth, the Smile Stylist, says hi. Brilliant. Thank you, Sandra. Yeah, love you guys at My Smile and the Smile Stylist. Thank you very much. And then T, which is Tracy, I think. Tracy says, working out our whys. So why we do what we do and why it's important for us to be kind of achieving those goals. What can our why be when the goal is based around profit and numbers? Ah, good. Is there a why that can help to inspire the team rather than just profit and growth? So brilliant question, Tracy. Thank you. Yeah, absolutely. I think that's why it's important to go almost take it back a step and say, actually, what is it we're trying to specialize in as a practice or be known for? Okay, it may be around general dentistry, but think about what is the impact you want to make as a practice for patients and your community. And what does that mean you will be known as? You know, the best dentist at preventative or caring treatment, or it may be handling, you know, difficult patients, whatever it is. But if you can start to think, actually, what is it we want to be known for based on our patients and the feedback from patients, that can be really inspiring for your teams. Alongside that, you can then start to think about numbers and growth, but it links to something bigger that is meaningful for you and meaningful for your teams. And if it's not immediately obvious, Tracy, a great thing to do is have this conversation with your teams. You'd like us to be known for something special in dentistry in our area. You'll have some ideas, and just invite your team to give you some feedback. What could we really specialize in? What could we be known for and become, you know, almost build your reputation around? And that then becomes the first point, because everybody gets engaged and motivated, and hopefully you do too. Then from there, you can start to build some numbers out. And you don't necessarily have to share the numbers with your teams, but you can start to share some of those aspirational, you know, figures that are important. So number of patients, number of different types of treatments, because you'll be able to then do the calculations to what that means for revenue. And it's just a way to really help you and your teams find something a bit more impactful. But great question, Tracy. I hope that's answered it for you. Yeah, I've got some thumbs up there. Thank you, Tracy. That's great. Usman, another great question. Can you still apply these methods if you're trying to up your private as an associate at a corporate? Oh, that's a great question. As an individual trying to incentivize a team who you're not really responsible for. Yes, yeah, I do know what you mean, Usman. Thank you. Yes, it's a brilliant question, Usman. I think there are some things you can do. And you know, certainly if you are an associate and you're trying to increase your private treatments, you know, you've got a mini team around you. You'll have a nurse that works with you. You'll have a reception team that are, you know, responsible for kind of filling your diary and you know, signposting patients to you. I would definitely, if you can't do this as a practice team, so first thing I would be doing is kind of almost going back to who's your practice manager, who's the you know, main kind of lead clinically in the practice at the corporate. Have this conversation with them. How do we start to put this in place? If that draws a blank, then it's certainly something you could be talking to your nurse and maybe one of the lead reception or front of house team about, you know, actually I'd like to start to think about these growth plans. But really the most important step is you getting clear on it first. So what are the levels of kind of patients you want to be seeing? What's the level of revenue or income you want to be generating? You don't have to share that piece, but if you do the maths to the numbers of patients, you can start to have that conversation. And there are so many great examples of associates building really, really strong brands in dentistry today. So, you know, you have an opportunity to do, you know, pretty much what you want to do and build out your own relationships with patients, your brand, whether you want to do that, you know, in the practice, on social media, however it is you choose. But it absolutely is possible for you to do that as an associate. I would say it's something that I definitely encourage, because long term, there's only upside to that. If you stay in the corporate practice and you get this great reputation, you've got lots of opportunities. If ever at some point you want to start your own practice, then you've built up, you know, that patient base and that loyalty as well. So I think there's lots of benefits to you planning that for yourself as well. Thanks, Usman. Glad that's useful. Tracy, thanks. I'm glad that was useful for you as well. Okay. So some great conversations and questions. Thank you all so much. Keep them coming in if there's anything else that we haven't covered so far tonight. I just want to share a couple of models with you. So this is from the Inspire Consult Sell book. You've got this Inspire model. I just want to kind of quickly walk you through it because this is really useful. So this is in terms of a communication model with patients, and we think about, at the heart of this model is about the rapport and creating a really good relationship with patients. I think that comes naturally to a lot of people, but for some people it's not quite so natural. So just that reminder that we should always be building rapport, always establishing that connection with the patient first is really important, because that helps us not only manage the relationship, but gives the patient confidence that we're the right person to help them and support them. And then the conversation, when we start to think about especially high value treatments, we should always start by thinking about insights. What are the insights that we can share with the patient about that treatment that they probably aren't aware of? And that's a really useful way to start a conversation about a type of treatment. And then after we've shared some insight, then think about, okay, what's this patient really looking for? What are the needs they have? So we have to ask them questions about that. And needs discovery is the most important part of the consultation and the conversation with the patient, because that allows you to accurately diagnose the patient's needs, not just clinical needs, but their personal needs around treatment. And from that perspective, you can then make a much more informed choice around what kind of treatment solution might be best for them. And so then after you've understood what their needs are, then we can start to talk about a solution. And from that solution, the patient is much more likely, if we understand their needs, to think, yeah, actually, that's a really good fit for me. And then we can make a proposal or a treatment plan. And the patient is kind of feels as if they've had some involvement in that. They're really kind of much more likely to want to agree to proceed. And then final step for us is to initiate some form of action. So we initiate action. We make sure that whether that's a deposit or that's a first appointment or a next appointment or a handover to another member of the team, if it's TCO that's handling that, but just making sure there's some form of action that we've agreed and the patient's agreed, so that they get the commitment from you and from themselves. And then the final step here, this is outside of the consult, this is about using a process of reflection, starting to think about, what are the improvements we want to make, what's working, what do we need to change and update and evolve as part of our approach with patients. And then the next model, so that's our Inspire kind of model in terms of the book from communication with patients. The next model is around coaching. So if we think about how we approach coaching our teams, beyond just the clinical practice in the day-to-day, thinking about the trust and the relationships we build with our teams, thinking about the contracts we have in place, and that's about agreement to standards, principles, behaviors, attitudes, making sure that we're clear about that. And it's very often overlooked, so we don't always take the time to get that clarity with our teams about how they're going to interact with each other, with us, with patients, and that's really important as a first step. Then we think about, okay, objectives and goals. What is each person's responsibility to deliver value within the practice outside of just their functional role? Then we start to think about opportunities for them to do their best work, and for us or someone in our management team to observe them working, so that from there we can then start to coach them and help them to make those refinements and adjustments to the way they work so they perform at a higher level. And then the final piece is thinking about succession planning for your practice, and thinking, the H in this model is heroes in the making. How do we start to help our teams see a bigger potential for themselves, a bigger contribution to the practice, so they start to take more responsibility? And that's really part of the approach that we take. So we think really effective communication with patients to grow the practice, really effective leadership coaching to coach and encourage our teams to do the best work and have those agreements in place around performance standards. And that these two kind of key areas make such an impact to the patient experience and your team's experience, and the growth that then comes off the back of that as part of the best practice approach to growing. So I said I would share the patient experience scorecard. So this is the patient experience scorecard. I'd love for your teams to do this. So this is something, I'm just going to put a link to this in the comments. This is something that if you have your teams have a look at, they're really going to get some benefit from this. Let me just put that link in the comments. Hold on a sec. So if you'd like to get your teams, it takes about 10 minutes to complete this. This is as a diagnostic, so it just gives you some real feedback on what it is that your team can start to focus on when it comes to improving the patient experience. And then the next, let me just put that over there. And then the next tool that we use, which is more for you as if you're leading your practice, is this what we call this coaching leaders scorecard. So this gives you some feedback. Let me send you this link in the chat as well. Oh, Sonny, thank you. Love the vision board. Thanks, Sonny. Yeah, me too. Something I check in on at least a couple of times a day. Thank you. And this one is really helping you and anybody in your leadership team to think about, how do we make this transition from overly directive kind of management of our teams to starting to coach people, starting to build this sense of independence, greater responsibility, really elevate performance and accountability in our practices. So you've got a couple of tools there that hopefully are useful for you. I just wanted to share those with you because we use them as part of programs, but actually people use them outside of the programs and can get quite a bit of insight and value just from working through those scorecards. So I share those with you. Hopefully they're useful. And then we have this, I talked about the growth target tracker. We've got this practice growth toolkit where we just got a number of different documents. We've got them all in one place. It's really useful because you end up then being able to have a plan in a single document that you can either work on yourself, share with your teams, communicate really easily, attach it to an email, send it to your practice manager or other partners that you're working with. It's a really nice way to just capture everything in a single place without having multiple different bits of paperwork all over the place. And if this is something that you're interested in, we are looking at. So I'm building or have built, I should say, a program that we're bringing both of these elements together: the communication program, the sales program, and the leadership program. And particularly, we're thinking about a focus on principles because you have the biggest responsibility in your practice. You're the ones that have the big challenge. So we're kind of looking at this as a kind of ongoing 12-month program because it's really difficult to fix and improve your practice, to set goals and achieve them in a shorter time frame than a year. So it's a 12-month program. If it's something if you've got some value from the seed and you think, what, actually, I'd like to go deeper, I'd like to know a bit more about what sits behind just the growth plan and the leadership development and improving sales and communication, then feel free to click this link. Let me just put this in the chat as well, actually, because this is the link to my calendar. If anybody kind of says, do you know what, I've had an interesting experience, I like what I see, I'd like to talk to you more about that. We've got this strategy session. If you'd like to have a conversation with me, do feel free to book a 45-minute session. That'll be on me, and it just gives you a chance to share, specifically about your practice, about your journey, what you're looking to achieve. Okay. Final thing. There's a couple of things that are like passion projects for me. One is kind of the mission that we're on in our business. So we really think about, we work with some people who are great clinically, great functionally, great at what they do, and what we're really trying to help them do is kind of make that transition to business leader. How do you become a great business leader alongside a great clinician, and then create these practices, these thriving workplaces that your teams love to come to? That's really the ambition, and many of you will already be doing this today. If you think you've got an opportunity to improve that and you'd like to kind of work on a program to do it, then I'd be very happy to have a conversation with you about how we can do that. But I also want to share about the values in our business. So I'm an advocate person. I learned about the United Nations Global Goals about 3.5-4 years ago now, and the idea is that they've got these 17 goals that if we all align with, we can start to kind of work on proactively. And the whole idea here is developed by kind of world leaders to try and improve life on Earth for everybody. And these 17 goals are, in their opinion, the answer. So what they suggest is, as business owners or business leaders, what we can do is pick a goal that's particularly kind of important or relevant for us and our business, and then become an advocate for that one goal. So I choose and select, goal 8, which is decent work and economic growth. And I also am part of this 1% pledge. I do a couple of things. One is that we're obviously advocates, but I also lead this men's mental health group in Cambridgeshire. This is something I do, it's kind of off my own back. I set this group up, and it's been running now for about 2.5 years. In fact, it'll be coming up for 3 years at the end of this year. And we've got this community of around 180 guys that just provide support for each other. We meet once a week. We've got all sorts of activities go on. We've got members who have all sorts of passion projects. One guy restores double-decker buses. We had a double-decker bus trip with about 50 of us on a double-decker bus in the summer. And I just share this with you, one, because I've noticed the difference it's made to men in my local community, and actually it's something I'm quite proud of. But the other thing is, I work in a national role, so I'm all over the country. And I don't get a lot of local benefit from this, but if I had a local business, if I owned a local dental practice, I'm pretty sure almost all of the guys that come to this walk, and their families and their friends, would all be signposted to come and see me at my practice. And it's purely because we're doing something that's connected with the local community. And I share this with you because I'd love you to think about, for your practice, for your team, what might there be that you could do that connects you with your local community, makes an impact, and really gives you that sense of satisfaction as well, that you're doing something that's really meaningful. So we've got 5 minutes to the end. We're coming to the end. A final message from me is, just that kind of, how will you use tonight to improve your practice, kickstart growth, but also start to think, how do you connect with a higher purpose for your teams and for yourself and your practice within your local community? That's really stimulated some thoughts this evening. And I'm going to finish now with an opportunity to ask questions. I'm also going to ask you just to, Lewis, brilliant. Lewis has got the first question. Thank you, Lewis. I thought I could rely on you. Thank you, Lewis. Lewis, what would you like to ask?
Thank you for a really inspiring presentation, Justin, as always. I was just wondering, thinking a few slides back, when you mentioned about when you're sort of working out actually what you want to deliver, and you talked about specialist treatments. Were you referring to specialist treatments in the sort of the technical aspects of an actual specialist, perio or something like that? Or were you thinking of sort of focus areas for treatment, such as sort of, say, non-specialist areas, it's like implants or bleaching or composite bonding, those sorts of things?
Yeah, the latter. I was thinking predominantly, Lewis. So things like the Invisalign, bleaching, composite bonding. But having said that, a lot of practices are getting specialists in for, like an endodontist or implantologist for a day a week or whatever it is to service those patients. I think it really does depend on the dentist's clinical confidence to deliver that. But generally speaking, what I'm seeing is that trend to, composite bonding, Invisalign, those kind of more probably aesthetic-based treatments for patients. Yeah, thanks. Great question, Lewis. Thank you. Appreciate it. Good. Okay, so in the final moments, I'd love to hear from. I'd love in the chat. Can I ask if you've got? I'd love just a kind of yes or no. Have you got a couple of things that you can take away and implement in practice, either tomorrow? Some of you might not be working tomorrow. I hope you're not. Or next week. I'd love to hear if you just put a why in the box if you've got something or one or two things that you can take away and apply in practice. Right, thank you, Sandra. That's great to hear. Thank you. Lovely. I hope you're not alone. Sorry. Jack, thank you, Jack. Jack says, yep. Sahar, yes, brilliant. Usman, thank you. Yes, great. Because for me, it's more about, it really is about what you can do with this information tonight. It's great that you're all here. I love having you join me this evening on a Thursday night. I'm glad that you're not the only ones with nothing better to do, but it really is about implementation. How do we go beyond a great conversation, a great session, and think, actually, what can I do with that? How do I make that impactful in my practice? Thank you, Jotty. Thank you. That's a yes. Tracy, thank you. That's great. So we've got some great responses. Thank you, everybody. For those of you who are going to implement some ideas from tonight, I'd love to hear. You've got my contact details. I would love to hear from you once you've had a chance. It might take you a week, a couple of weeks. Once you've had the chance to make some changes, I'd love for you to just circle back with me. Let me know how it goes, because that's the big thing for me is, are we getting the impact beyond just these workshops into your practice? I'd love to know that we're actually making a change, helping you to make the changes that you want. So do please keep in touch, circle back with me. And if anybody would like to, as I say, go deeper and have a strategy session, have a conversation with you specifically about your practice. Sometimes, we covered a lot of useful topics this evening, but there'll still be things that are niggling away that you think, yeah, that's all very well, but how do we deal with this situation? Or how do I get to this position? And I'd love to have a one-to-one conversation with you, give you some pointers. And if you think then beyond that, there's more that we could do together, I'd be delighted to have a conversation. But thanks so much to everybody. And thank you for your engagement. Thank you for indulging me in my polls and my questions and answers. I really do appreciate it. And I hope you all have a wonderful rest of the week. And we've got one more day to the weekend. Then the weekend's here. So have a great Friday tomorrow, everybody. Thanks so much for investing your Thursday evening with me. And I look forward to seeing you all hopefully in the near future. I'll be running a few more of these workshops, so I'll keep you posted. And if you are able to join us, I'd love to see you all again soon. So have a great evening. Thank you, everybody. Thanks so much. Pleasure. Have a great one. Thanks, guys. Thank you.